Hi everyone, I am Deepti Behel, another kidney warrior, and welcome to our another episode of Kidney Talkies. Today we have a special guest, Nancy Marlin, joining us today to share her kidney journey. Hi Nancy,
Hi, Deepti. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, and how do you feel about joining Kidney Talkies?
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I think it's always wonderful to provide more information to transplant people and understand what other people have gone through. I learned a lot from other patients when I was going through the process, so I think this is a very helpful program.
Thank you, Nancy. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and your kidney journey?
I'm originally from New York, but I've slowly moved across the country. I'm a professor, and I taught at universities in Missouri and Iowa, and then most recently at San Diego State University, where I retired a short time ago. My kidney journey is, like many people, somewhat long and complicated. I have a polycystic kidney disease. It's a genetic disease, and it's been just devastating to my family. It killed my mother when she was in her 50s she was on dialysis. It contributed to the death of my youngest sister, and it probably killed my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, even though she wasn't diagnosed at the time. I was tested when I was in my 20s, and they said, they looked at my kidneys and they said, "You don't have it." And I was great. That's because you have a 50% chance of having it from, your mother and your father. Um, but then when I guess I was probably in my late 50s, I went in for a regular physical exam with my primary care person, and she said she felt that my liver was enlarged, and she wanted me to get an ultrasound, which I went in and did. And you know how the ultrasound technicians, like most technicians, are not supposed to tell you anything. But what I said is, "Oh, can you see the cysts on my kidneys? Because last time they couldn't see those, even though last time was decades ago, it was accurate." And she said, "Oh, yes, it's just like, it looks like craters of the moon." So I knew I did have polycystic kidney disease. And the reason my liver seemed large is that many people with polycystic kidney disease also have polycystic livers, but that doesn't affect the functioning of the liver. They're enlarged. It's sort of anatomically they get difficult, but the liver still functions. But unfortunately, then my kidneys were not functioning well, and they began to decline. And so I spent a lot of time reading a lot of medical literature about kidney disease and about transplant because I knew I wanted a transplant. As you know, there are only two treatments, transplant or dialysis. I did not want to be on dialysis. And what I found was a wonderfully rich literature from patients. And that's what I said earlier. I'm so pleased you're doing your part to really help inform other patients about what others have gone through. So I spent a lot of time reading how do you find a living donor? Because the wait time for me, I was told in Southern California, could be something like 7 to 10 years for a deceased donor. So I definitely wanted a living donor, but at that point you're like, how would I ever find anybody to give me a kidney? But I did what they recommended, and it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult emotionally. It's very uncomfortable. You feel very vulnerable. You don't want to be a burden, all of this. But indeed, a colleague from work volunteered to donate one of her kidneys, and we had the transplant in December of 2018. So I'm coming up on 8 years in December.
Oh wow, congratulations on completing 8 years on kidney transplant. Could you tell us your first few moments about when you first received the kidney transplant?
Well, you're going into surgery, and you think when you go into surgery, you're going to be scared and worried. And I was thrilled. I was going to get a kidney because I had not felt well for so long. One of the things that almost all kidney patients, when they get to end stage failure, there's just this constant fatigue. I mean, you just, no matter how much you sleep, you just are exhausted all the time. And I was really having problems. I remember one time I was driving home and I was probably like 2 miles from my house and I was wondering, can I make it? Should I pull over? Because, you're just like feeling like you're going to nod off at any moment. So I had that constant fatigue and I, I, I wasn't I could no longer exercise. I couldn't work full time anymore. So the idea that I was getting a kidney, I was so happy. I did go into the surgery a little bit concerned. What if something does happen to my wonderful donor? But that everything worked out just fine. The first few moments are what I remember the most. I woke up in recovery, and you're still somewhat groggy because you had the anesthesia, and I had, a bit of pain from the incision, but that fatigue was gone. It was just, I felt healthy in a strange way, healthier than in those first few moments that I had in a long time. So the kidney was just in there, being a good kidney, cleaning everything up, and that's what I remember so clearly, that feeling that the fatigue is gone. And my donor, gratefully, as I said, was absolutely fine. She stayed overnight in the hospital. I stayed 3 nights in the hospital, and we both recovered very quickly.
Oh, nice. And this is a quick question. I always ask other patients. When I was actually given the kidney, the first thing when I woke up was extreme pain, and doctor
Oh,
coming and telling me, "Can you start walking immediately?" And when I try to explain my friends, like they expect you to start walking immediately after
right.
transplant. So could you please
Yeah,
throw a little bit light why that is needed?
right. No, I mean, I did have some pain. I'm not saying I didn't, but it wasn't that extreme. I mean, they do give you, I mean, I was on morphine. I had one of those buttons you could push. I don't know if you had that, where
No, I
you
did
can,
not.
yeah, well, it's got a timer on it. You can't get it every time, but it was I don't know what they call it, like an automatic thing where if you needed the morphine, you would just push this button, and as long as you had so long between the intervals when you were pushing, it would give you some morphine. So I remember that first night, particularly, I think what would happen is when it would wear off, I'd feel the pain again. So then I'd push the button and then I'd fall back to sleep. And I think I did that several times. The walking, you're right. It's just good for you, and you don't get blood clots and all this sort of stuff to get up and walk around. And I didn't feel like walking either the first time they came and said to walk. Just, it's amazing because like getting your legs out of bed, you don't realize you have all those muscles kind of, in your abdomen you have to use and they kind of hurt. But I do think the walking, not so much right away, but that was something that really helped with my recovery because as soon as I got home, again, that was 3 days later, they kept saying walk, walk, walk. So I tried, I'm trying to be the very good patient. I want to take great care of this kidney, this wonderful gift. So I went outside and I tried just walking to the corner, which is not very far, and walking back. And that was like a lot, then I had to go lie down. But I did that every day and walk a little further, a little further. And then, I was walking a few miles within a couple of weeks or so. So I think the walking really helped me recover quickly.
And what was the first thing you had actually eaten after transplant? Because I do remember first day after transplant, I was on a liquid diet, but from the second day itself, I was very hungry.
I was hungry too because they tell you, you're not supposed to eat for 24 hours before the surgery, or I don't know exactly how it was, but I couldn't have anything to eat for quite some time before the surgery, so I was hungry, but I was in the hospital. So the hospital food is, not particularly wonderful. Also, I'm vegan, so they were trying to figure out things they could give me that I would eat. So I actually do not remember the first thing I ate because it was something they put together in the hospital that just some vegetables or something. But yeah, it does. You are hungry enough that it's like, good, I'll eat this. I'm happy.
Yeah, I actually had the same case because I'm a vegetarian. In plus, I was on the dialysis for 8 months, so I mean, I just was finding it hard. Okay, I can eat everything because I
Right,
have because when you have not eaten tomatoes, potatoes, oranges, bananas for a long
right,
time,
right. No, I talked to someone coming off of dialysis, and again, all they wanted was avocados.
I don't blame them. I know
Yeah,
somebody who
yeah.
actually was asking for 3 glasses of orange juice.
Right, right. If you can't eat avocados or oranges or whatever, that's what you want. So, yeah, they went out and bought a whole bunch of avocados and I don't know, made guacamole or something. They were so happy they could eat avocados.
Uh,
But fortunately, because my transplant was is what called is called preemptive, so I was never on dialysis. So I never had those restrictions. So I wasn't craving, certain things. I just was hungry.
And with the PCKD, I'm wondering, did you had like blood pressure issues during the time before transplant?
You mean high blood pressure? Yeah,
Yes.
I did, which is again very common because people always think your kidneys are just a big filter. They filter out toxins and so forth, but they do so much more than that. I mean, they are very much involved in the regulation of blood pressure. Um, One of the reasons I was so tired before, as many people are, is I became very anemic because your kidneys are actually they actually secrete a hormone that's related to the production of red blood cells. So I had, I was anemic, I was hypertensive, and then once I had the transplant, the anemia went away, and so did the high blood pressure. And I'd been on, even before I was diagnosed with kidney disease, I'd been on high blood pressure medication because they didn't know why, but I had high blood pressure and they were trying to control it. So it was due to the kidneys that were starting to fail, and fortunately that went away.
Oh, wow. How many medications do you take right now? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, I'm on 3 immunosuppressants, which many people are. I'm on, well, one of them is different from what many people are on. Almost everyone starts off on tacrolimus and mycophenolate and prednisone. And then over time, these might change. And I didn't like the idea that tacrolimus was toxic to the kidneys. I thought that's not a good plan for long term. So there was another immunosuppressant, belatacept. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. This one is actually an infusion, though. So it's a bit of a, you know, logistically, you have to go in every 28 days to get an infusion. But then I don't take any tacrolimus. I just go and take the belatacept. So I'm on belatacept, mycophenolate, and prednisone.
I am actually allergic to tacrolimus because as soon as I got the transplant and after the
Ah,
first dose of tacrolimus, it caused my hemoglobin, RBCs, and platelets to fall down.
wow.
And then I was put on everolimus. Then they linked it to some other reactions. Finally, I'm on cyclosporin, but the infusion you are mentioning was one of the options doctors was evaluating
Yeah.
for me.
Well, again,
Thankfully,
I
I did not
read the
had that.
literature. Yeah, I read the literature on it, and it does seem like it's might be better long term for the kidney. As I say, logistically, it's a little bit of a hassle because you have to go in for an infusion every 28 days, but it's only a half-hour infusion. Now, of course, it takes longer than that by the time they hook you up and you get the meds and all that stuff. But so yeah, every 28 days I go in and I get an infusion of belatacept.
I think I had my enough episodes of blood infusion, and I actually got UTI, two UTIs back to back after transplant.
Oh,
And
oh,
they put a midline, and you have to do that injection kind of a thing.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was scary enough for me altogether.
Exactly, exactly. And then in terms of other drugs I take, I don't know if you've heard of a drug called Pemgarda.
No, I don't know
Okay.
about that.
This is one that, this is interesting, I think, because like many people who are on immunosuppressants, I don't generate any antibodies, for example, to the COVID vaccine. And,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, which is not uncommon because you know, it's an mRNA vaccine, so you have to have a functioning immune system that starts generating the antibodies to you know, this mRNA. Um, and because I'm so immunocompromised or suppressed, I don't generate those antibodies. And in fact, I've been in a study almost since, I don't know, many years now. Johns Hopkins has a study where they monitor transplant responses to people getting vaccines. And so I learned early on, like many people, I don't make much or any of many people make some response. I make no, I had no antibodies. But Pemgarda is a product that it basically, and I can't explain the whole technology, but they by changing some amino acid in their monoclonal antibody, they're able to make it a longer acting antibody. And so they fashion antibodies to COVID, and then you get those in an infusion. So I actually, even though I can't produce them, I get that drug, so I have some protection from COVID. And also, because I'm very, very careful. I've never had COVID or other infectious diseases since I've been transplanted.
Oh wow, I actually never got COVID myself too, but all of
Good.
a sudden I learned my kidneys had failed.
Yeah. No, I want to take such care of this precious kidney. So still, when I'm in like inside groups, I still wear a mask. I have a CO2 monitor because if the air quality gets really bad, where I'm breathing in other people's CO2, I'll leave. I just I don't have people in my house without testing them. I'm very very careful because I don't want because I can't without a functioning immune system, it's really hard to fight off anything.
Yes, and another quick question. How often do you see a dermatologist? Because as a transplant recipient, we need to be careful about skin
Oh,
cancer. And you stay in San Diego, so which is like full of beaches.
yeah. No, and of course it was full of stupid people like me when I was younger, trying to get tan and, out in the sun with mirrors and all the, this sort of stuff, which was really bad. But no, so I do get skin cancers, and that's part, again, all the sun exposure, but it's also part of the immunosuppressants because normally the immunosuppressants, your immune system would kind of prowl around and get rid of some of these little skin cancers, but that doesn't happen. So I see the dermatologist every 4 months, and I've had quite a few, procedures to remove. I've had all sorts of skin cancers. So I've had basal and squamous and melanoma. So I am very careful to go every 4 months and get them removed.
And how do you manage your nutrition? Because nutrition plays a good part in the post-transplant care.
Yeah. Well, as I've mentioned, I'm vegan. So in fact, I have no evidence for this, but I think one of the reasons my kidneys didn't fail until I was, quite, older in life, because with polycystic kidney disease, it usually happens more midlife. But I eat very well. I eat very healthy. So I'm hoping that actually did postpone, the onset of where my kidneys failed. But yes, it's very important, and I try and make sure that I keep even when I'm in situations like in the hospital or traveling or whatever, that I'm still always eating very well. Now I'm not. I always say I'm not obsessive. Um, Although other people say you're incredibly obsessive, but if there's something that has a little bit of dairy in it or something, sometimes I'm like, okay, that's all right. But generally, yeah, I don't eat any as I say, I don't eat any dead animals and I don't eat any dead animal products. So,
Okay, so what are your favorite things to eat?
um, there's so many things. There's so many things. I eat a lot of, people are always saying, what do you eat? Well, I eat plants, basically. I eat lots of plants, all sorts of vegetables, fruits, nuts, lentils, pasta. I mean, there's lots of I don't lack for things to eat. But I don't know if I have one favorite. I like lots of things.
Oh, wow. So, any favorite dish you like to cook yourself?
No, I do not cook. Which is fortunate for the world. In fact, my dear mother, who I mentioned she died of the same disease, she was always so embarrassed that her daughter didn't know how to cook.
Who cooks in your house in that case?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, my husband is a very good cook. So he likes to cook and I like to eat. So it all works out. But no, I have all these horror stories for when I was a kid. I'll just tell you one, but there are many. There are many of these stories. One time I went into the kitchen and my mother had bones like boiling in a pot, and I was like, is she sterilizing them for the dog or what is she doing? And she said, no, I'm going to make soup, and the bones give the broth flavor. I was like, okay, and that sort of stuck in my head somehow. And I probably was much older than I think I was. I think I was very young. And in her attempts to get me to cook, she was going to make a meatloaf. And she left me all the instructions and she said, you put it in the oven and she was going to be out and I'll come home. And okay. So I had leftover chicken. Again, this was years ago. I ate meat and stuff. I had leftover chicken for lunch, and I'm looking at these bones. I'm like, oh, bones give things flavor. So I kind of disregarded all the instructions she gave me. I just took the chopped meat. I cleaned the bones very carefully. I put the bones down. I put the chopped meat all around it, and I put it in the oven. Um, and then my mother comes home and she opens the oven and it looked like ancient ruins because there was just all the meat had crumbled because there wasn't anything holding it together, and bones are sticking out. So that is one of many stories. So that's why my mother was so embarrassed that I could not cook despite all her good intent. I mean, she found me. I was trying to follow a recipe once. It said rolled oats. I'm like, okay, okay. So she came in the kitchen. I've got the rolling pin. I'm like, I wonder if I've rolled them enough. Just, there were just all these things. So it just didn't work. Some people are, you're probably a wonderful cook. Many people are, but I am not. I don't cook, but I like to eat.
So when I started cooking accidentally because when I moved out of my hometown to a new city in India, my cook was a horrible person, and my roommates decided to fire her. And I did not have any option except to learn cooking because I hated
Uh-huh.
eating outside food. I cannot
Uh-huh.
eat it all time.
Well, and again, many Indian friends grew up having cooks. So they were in the same situation. Well, you learned it, but they were just like, I don't know what to do. I'm used to having a cook. Just,
I mean, in my house, my mother used to cook, but when you move out, you actually have these household available at a very cheap cost in India.
right, right.
But when you have like roommates who fire her despite your best protest, you end up learning the cooking yourself because
Uh-huh,
you cannot
uh-huh.
eat
Yeah,
outside always.
yeah. Well, one thing that's so good about the Indian diet is it is basically vegetarian. I mean, I know you could get veg and non-veg and all that, but it's so much better than the American diet. So I hope that Indians, at least when I've been there and some Indian friends I have, it's getting more Americanized, these fast food places and all that. And that's so sad because they had such a good diet.
I actually have a joke to tell. So recently I went to a restaurant with a couple of friends and we found mac and cheese in the kids menu in the Indian restaurant, and one of our American friend wanted to order that because she told she's allergic to a lot of things and she could
Uh-huh.
carry too much spice. And I was wondering what is mac and cheese doing in the menu in the first place.
Exactly, exactly. Yep. That's the whole getting Americanized.
We actually even have like few places which have like a naan pizzas or these Indian inspired tacos. But and I have my American friends craving a lot for samosas and garlic naans and chicken tikka
Oh,
masalas.
oh no, yes, I really enjoy Indian food because there was the veg part and I could just eat everything.
Oh yes, because everything I basically can convert everything I cook into a vegan easily. Even the lentils, instead of the ghee, I can just put in the olive oil or some other
Exactly,
oil.
exactly.
It's pretty easy to
Yeah.
convert. You replace paneer by tofu because that's essentially what I do a lot of times.
Right. Now, and I was in southern India for a while and dosa, I just still like crave dosa. It was so good.
I think there are a lot of good restaurants around San Diego also.
There are some. There are some. Yeah. And in fact, I've noted when I go with my Indian friends, the food somehow seems to taste better. I think they don't spice it as much for me or something, but I'm like, yeah, I do like it
I
spicy.
think it's just like you need to mention the spice levels because even I
Yeah.
cannot tolerate too much spicy food,
Right.
thanks to 10 years of living in America.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I have other Indian friends, they, no matter how much they spice it here, they have their own little spice jar. They're always putting stuff on.
Okay, but yeah, what is it one thing your husband cooks that you really like most?
Oh, he makes these different tofu recipes, and I don't even know how to quite describe them. The tofu is kind of coated, and then there's like a lovely sauce and vegetables. I know he gets them from the New York Times, I think, those recipes. They are really good. I like those a lot.
Oh, nice. That sounds
Yeah,
delicious.
it is. It is delicious. Look in the New York Times for tofu recipes. They're very good.
And any advice you would like to share with the people who are fighting with the kidney disease? And also, if you could tell a little bit about your course, how to find a living kidney donor, because I know a lot of kidney patients are
Yeah.
seeking kidney donors and don't know how to even begin that with.
Well, let me answer that second question because that's the really important one. I learned so much during this whole transplant process about how to find a living donor, and I learned it from other patients. And so now I started a class, I teach it at two local transplant centers on how to find a living donor. And basically, the class is different from a lot of material you can get online. I mean, there's good material online about how to find a living donor. But the problem is, it's such a different process to watch a video or read information than it is to cognitively construct your own story that you're going to share with people. And so my class, this is actually what we do. I say, I want you to leave here today with a first draft of your story. And so the first part of the class is just some basic education because I say as soon as you're going to start talking to people about this, they're going to have questions. You know, isn't dialysis the same as transplant? Who pays for all of this? How can somebody live with one kidney? What's the surgery like? And it's not that the patients need to be experts, but they need to be able to have informed conversations with people. So we do some basic education, which a lot of people already know because they've had like Transplant 101 or something at their transplant center. But at that point, they're giving them so much information. I want to go over stuff again. Then we start into how do you construct this story? And I have a little sort of template. I tell them, we'll use this here, you can change it later. But I basically say, I want you to say, start off with one sentence about your kidney disease. Don't go on and on about kidney disease. People don't know what you're talking about, stage 3, stage 4, that kind of stuff. So have one sentence. Then you're going to end with, I'm seeking a living donor, someone who would donate one of their kidneys to me. Notice I tell people never ask anybody to donate. You're sharing your story. Asking people to donate is I think it's just too awkward a situation. So you're going to share your story. But then in between is the personal why. Why do you want to find a living donor? And that's what they have to put in terms of they talk about life on dialysis. They can talk about they want to see their kids grow up. They can talk about all sorts of reasons why they want a living donor. And that's the draft of their story. And then we share those stories. They have to say them. And this uh, deep tea is really, really hard to do. people, I mean, I've had people crying, and it's so hard to say this. At any rate, then we talk about how do you share your stories. And the truth is, most donors already know their recipients. That is, yes, you do have people get things off of Facebook and all, and I strongly encourage that. But you need to have personal conversations, and that's what the story is about. And then there are many other ways you can share your story. You know, you can do car signs, you can do yard signs, you can do T-shirts, lots of things. And you should do all in social media. You should do all of those. But it's this personal sharing of the story, because what you're hoping is that then, people want to start having a conversation. They ask you questions. And the miraculous thing in my own situation was after those conversations, then some people say, well, what do you have to do to be a donor? Maybe I could be a donor. When you're just, I mean, it just takes your breath away. You're so excited. But I always tell people, don't get too excited, because, again, the transplant centers are very selective about who they're going to approve, as they properly should be. They don't want to have anybody who they think is going to harm them in any way. So you just have to keep going until you actually have an approved donor. And again, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of emotion, but it's worth it, because then, like you and I, you have a functioning kidney again.
Yeah,
And I
that,
forgot the first part of your question.
I think this is more important question, like how to
Okay.
find a living kidney donor.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's a lot of work, and but it works. That's what I did. I never asked anybody to donate. I shared my story with lots of people, and then again, I was so fortunate. Some friends, said, "What do you have to do?" And they contacted the transplant center. I also want to tell people, part of the emotional part is you'll be very disappointed, because some people who I thought would be people who would help me, I'd share my story and they'd say, "Oh, Nancy, I'm so sorry to hear that." And then they change the subject and you're just like devastated. So there's a lot of emotion that goes into this. I always tell people to start the conversation, not just, starting to talk about kidney disease, but sort of frame it. Almost everybody says, "Hi, how are you? What's happening, Nancy?" And then I sort of would frame it by saying, "I'm dealing with a serious medical situation." And then they say, "What?" And then I'd share my story.
That's a good approach. And in my last question, any advice you would give to other kidney warriors on how to be healthy while dealing with the kidney disease, especially emotionally?
Yeah, it's very difficult to deal with this emotionally. You just have to, in in my case, I think being your own advocate makes you feel like you're doing something, because a lot of times in medical situations you're just very passive. I mean, others make decisions for you and take care of you, but for kidney disease, particularly if you want to find a living donor, you can't be passive. You've got to be actively searching for this donor. And I think that process gives you some control over the whole fact that you have kidney disease. So, rather than just the mental health being so depressed that you've got this, dreadful kidney disease, you're trying to do something about it. And then, of course, do all the other things you're supposed to do. I mean, take whatever meds you're supposed to take, do a good diet. I think, again, I happen to think a plant-based diet, and some other, renal dietitians say this as well. And, you need to exercise, the whole healthy lifestyle, because it's not only taking care of your health mentally and physically, but you want to be in very good shape when you go into surgery, because I think that helps you recover quickly.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for your time today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe Kidney Talkies.